I was really clear on what is the problem that I solve, what is the promise that I can deliver. I like to think about it as just where can you specialize? Look at the people who got paid the most. Typically, if you look at doctors, a brain surgeon is going to get paid more than a general physician. In the engineering space, like a biomedical engineer is going to get paid more than a civil engineer because their area of expertise is more specialized. And I thought about that the same way in my business. I'm like, okay, how can I specialize the promise that I can deliver based off of results that I have seen and the pattern of results that I'm getting with clients or the pattern of results that I've been able to get for myself?
Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show, where today we talk about business mindset and closing the racial inequality gap by running a very successful business. I couldn't be more excited to be joined by somebody who I deeply respect. And we met each other online and subsequently were able to meet each other in person. Now, I have to tell you that I was at a mastermind in Beverly Hills and I ran into her. I happened to sit right behind her when the event had started. And so the queen is sitting in the front row and she's asking amazing questions. And there's things that I find myself attracted to in other people that I don't naturally possess. And whenever that happens, I want to get close to that person because maybe by like human osmosis, they might rub off on me. And so Jereshia Hawk is one of those people. So she raises her hand and she's talking about how she, as a by and large solopreneur at the time, had created a seven-figure business on coaching. And that kind of silenced the room because there was other seven-figure business owners. But to hear that a single person had done that by sheer chutzpah and will and brilliance. And then she talked about how she built systems within that. I thought to myself, now here's a person who I think would be so good as a juxtaposition on the podcast. We talk about go-to-market strategies and we talk about growth and we talk about seven-figure businesses. And we think sometimes it has to look a certain way. And I couldn't be more excited to have Jereshia come in, talk about the business of her business, talk about the resilience, and then just get a spark of her. Like she carries an energy that I am so excited to share. Jereshia, thank you for being on the Jasmine Star Show.
I'm honored. I'm so excited to be here. So thanks for the invite.
Yes. I mean, we've been waiting for a minute to have this happen, and this is the perfect timing. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm pumped.
Okay. So let's get a little bit of a background. So people now know, like they've established you, like clearly you are, the proof is in the pudding. You're a successful entrepreneur. But prior to getting to this point, what were the things that you did to actually build your business? And then we'll get into the business of the business, but how do we hit the ground running and saying, okay, this is how she got there?
Yeah, I mean, my background is I'm a civil engineer by degree. I was a pipeline engineer working in corporate America. And one of my most recent jobs that I had before leaving was I had to go out into like rural neighborhoods and convince people why they should get on natural gas. Because at the time I was in Michigan and customers had to pay a portion of the pipeline for us to build it out there. So, I mean, I was like knocking doors, getting people, trying to convince homeowners why they should make a massive investment over a 10, 20 year period.
But if you're a civil engineer by training and you're door knocking, that means you got into sales.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, exactly.
Okay.
So yes, like I have like 10 years of experience doing sales in like random roles or non-traditional sales jobs.
Okay.
So I used to do auto shows for Chrysler. I would travel around the country in college and like had to sell. I mean, you weren't like necessarily selling a car on the showroom floor, but I mean, I'm interacting with thousands of people on a day, learning like, okay, what's your family dynamic? What do you guys need in a vehicle? Let me show you the car that's going to be the best for you.
Okay.
So I've been really reflecting on like, how did that end up in this world? And it's like all these micro moments of knocking doors, trying to convince people to get natural gas, to selling cars on auto show floors, to even selling ice cream. I used to work at Cold Stone. That was my first real job. And at the time, Cold Stone was the most like expensive ice cream on the market. And it just helped me understand like psychology in a different way, just through experience. But all of those sales experiences really, I think, allowed me when I stepped into entrepreneurship. And with my engineering background, it was just like, you need to focus on human contact, real human relationships, and really understand what is the essence of this person? What is the identity that they're trying to, like what aspect of their identity are they trying to actually solve a problem for? And how can I align what I have with what they deeply desire? And I think when I started in the coaching business, I mean, I didn't know this world existed. Like it was, I feel like we're like an underground economy, and then you get in it and it's like, oh, okay, there's like a lot here.
Yes.
But doing all those experiences gave me the courage to start recording live videos on Facebook, because my peers were asking me, how are you getting promoted? Like, how are you getting all these mentors? How are you getting these opportunities?
Okay, so I'm gonna pause here. You went from Cold Stone to cold knocking.
Yes.
Okay. And then from there, people are seeing this ascension. Because you're understanding psychology and because you're understanding like literally grassroots sales.
Yeah.
And you're getting comfortable with people saying no to you.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm little black girl in like rural Michigan. I mean, you'd go in these neighborhoods. I knew nothing. I didn't know people didn't have natural gas. I didn't know, I'm in cornfields. Like, it was very stark difference reality. So it's like, it also teaches you, how do you find a common ground with somebody who looks nothing like you, doesn't come from where you come from, but we're all human at the end of the day. Like, there's some commonality we can find here, and that's what helped me establish and build relationships. And it's just like all those micro moments of learning how to connect with people who come from a totally different world from you, cold knocking on doors. I mean, I had started a business in college because I ran out of financial aid and started an e-commerce business. That's what got me on Instagram in the first place. So it's like all these like...
What were you selling?
Bandage dresses. This is at the time where like the Kardashians were wearing these like super fitted, would suck everything, lift everything up. But they were by like Hervé Leger. Those were like $1,000 dresses. I found a manufacturer out of Thailand who would let me buy the dress after I had already sold it. Because I was...
so you didn't have to worry about inventory?
I didn't have to worry about inventory.
Stop right
I'm like, I
now.
have to make money fast, legally. Okay?
Yes.
I need to make money fast. I was like, I can maybe do amateur night. I ain't got a lot of assets, and I'm like, I might lose my black card from my dancing abilities. So like, I'm like, I had to get creative.
From dancing to dresses. Let's go.
I never danced. So I was like, it crossed my mind. I'm like, even at the frat parties, my charisma and my mouth is, I could talk. Dancing was not the thing that drew the attention.
So you were able to sell dresses and then...
Off of Instagram. So this is back in like 2014. And I had bought inventory at first, and it was like $2,000 worth of inventory. I'm like, this is not going to work out because I don't have enough money to keep buying product, and I'm not moving it fast enough.
Yes.
So that's when I found the manufacturer. And then this was early on where you could like pay people $50, and they had like those massive fashion accounts. Like, I found somebody that had like 1 million followers, and she would charge me $50 per post to...
All the good old days.
I wish. And that's how I like got my footing.
Okay.
And that's the only reason why I got on Instagram. I never used social media prior to that.
So then, but after the dresses, you got into cold knocking because you did the cold knocking.
Cold knocking was happening simultaneously. So that was like one of my major, like my first internship when I was in corporate. So when I was at my utility, I was cold knocking, going around asking people to like get on natural gas. And at the same time, I was in my senior year of college trying to get my engineering degree. I was cold knocking, going around neighborhoods to get them on natural gas. And at the same time, I started the business because I was making enough money from my job to cover my bills, like my rent or whatever, but not enough to cover the $14,000 for tuition.
Got it.
So they kept that business only for a year and made $50,000. I literally shut it down because I started my like big girl job the next day.
Okay.
And then as I'm in corporate, I was in still as a pipeline engineer, but for 4 years. And I was in a leadership track for the first 2, so they rotated us every 6 months. And in the last 2 years, I was promoted to head engineer of a $400 million pipeline project. And it's just like, even back then, a lot of my peers like, how did you get this job? Because I was not qualified. I'm 20 something years old, like 24, $400 million. I know how to read my drawing sheets and stuff like that, but I don't have the experience to necessarily be on this project. But I was really good at like connecting with all of our crew. So, you go out these pipe yards and, you have welders, you have people from all like union workers. I was really good at like rallying everybody together, getting the information that I needed from different departments to help move our project forward. And I was really good at understanding what management wanted out of us. And I knew how to articulate that back. And that's what they told me why I got the job. So it's all these random hodgepodge experiences.
So you get promoted, and then you start going online teaching people how you made that happen?
Well, how I was doing well in my job. Because at the time, people knew me from like, they knew I had a business from college, like some of my friends.
Okay.
And then people was like, dude, you're just like you're crushing it in corporate, which I was. But I had a really great team of mentors. I called them my personal board of advisors. It was like 12 of them. And I did a really good job networking. Everybody knew who I was. So they're just like, who are you? Like, you are thriving.
Got it.
And so many people at my job were asking me questions. I'm like, I'm going to just start going on Facebook and answering questions on my lunch break every day.
What year is this?
This is like 2016.
Okay. Okay.
So I start answering questions, and then like friends of friends would be like, my friend told me you had a business and like you are just a go-getter. Like can you help me accomplish my goals? And I was like, sure. So I would just like talk to people, and then somebody's like, can I pay you? I was like, I don't know like how to charge. Like I didn't know coaching was a thing, but that's how it kind of slowly matriculated into this. And then after I got like my first client was $180. It was $60 a month for 3 months. We met every single week. And then I got like, somebody was like, have you ever heard of, I went to some event and there was another coach there, and she was like, what the heck? You charged how much? I said $180 for my first client. And that's when I got introduced to the digital marketing world and the online education space. And I hired a private one-on-one coach, and then it's just like you get sucked into the wormhole of our online space.
Interesting.
So it was like I don't think I've ever actually articulated like all those little micro moments. So thanks for asking that. But
yeah, no, because it's super helpful, because one of the big focuses right now is understanding scale.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times what we have seen and experienced is scale happens in a very formulaic way. And it could be true. And in your situation, what did your scaling look like? Because from my perspective and from what I know, it wasn't traditional, like I'm going to build out a team of 12 people to get into it. It's like, so when did you start scaling, and how were you able to do it in a very small way? People want to look at your story and say, okay, I get her, and I think that I can I think I could scale to 7 on my own, 7 figures on my own.
I mean, I think that coming from an engineering background gave me a really, I think, advantage as an entrepreneur, because I was trained like educationally and then in my job. Like these are the resources we have. This is the outcome we need to get. This is all you have. You need to make that work. So, I mean, that's just like my default mode of thinking.
Yeah.
So when I get into business, I mean, there was never like a moment in time. Well, I never thought I would even quit my job. Like nobody thinks about electricity and natural gas until it doesn't come on. Like it's very rewarding. I felt the impact of it. I never thought I would leave. But when I had sold $60,000 in sales in 1 month, I was like, oh, I can always go back and get a job. I'm going to like see what's available here.
Okay.
So the first, like it was never like I'm going to scale to 7 figures. That was never like an initial goal.
What was your first goal?
My first goal, well, the $60,000 blew my mind. Like in 1 month, I was like, this is bananas. Like at the time, I think I was making $85,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So I was like, this is insane. So I was like, let's see if I can do $100,000 in a year. If I did 60 grand in a month, I can close the gap for another 40K.
Got it.
And I remember I made the first $100,000 and was like, I went and did all my favorite things. I went and got my Cold Stone ice cream. I went to Olive Garden. Like I called my best friend. And then I was like, okay, let me see if I can take home 15K a month. Because I'm like, that's going to be astronomical. Like living in Detroit, the most expensive apartment at the time, downtown Detroit, was $2,000 a month. And it was floor to ceiling windows. It was on my vision board. I wanted a golden doodle dog. And yeah, I just wanted to make 15 grand take home pay.
Okay, so what I want to do is, and I'm using your story because if people can interject themselves in your story, then they see a path for them. So we get into the nitty gritty of the business. Now at the time, somebody hears you say, I closed 60,000 in sales. Number one, how was that accomplished? And when you had said, I'm wondering if I can hit 15K per month, what did that look like then? And then later in the conversation, I want to be like, well, what does it look like now? And how has the structure changed?
Thanks for pulling us in.
Okay.
So when I think about back then, a lot of the same principles that I used to get to 7 figures is what I got to 6, which is what got me to my first $10,000. Is like I stopped doing what I saw everybody in the online space doing, because selling $27, $97, like $1,000 digital courses did not make sense for what capacity I had currently built out for myself. So when I first started the business, I'm still working 40, 50 hours a week.
Got it.
I don't have money for ad spend. And I'm like, I don't have the skill set of paid ad media. And I'm like, I don't know, I don't know if I'm going to figure that out right now. And also at the time, I did not have an existing audience to sell to. And that was really the first wake up aha moment for me, is like, you are not an online influencer. You are a coach or a service provider that is leveraging social media to build trust and build affinity with an audience. You're not looking to grow a large audience to then sell products to. And that was I think a really big lesson I had to learn early on. It's still something you struggle with, because every time you go online, it's so easy of I want to go viral. Why am I not getting enough views? Why don't don't I have millions of followers? And it's like, you have to understand, what model are you actually building? So that was probably lesson number one that I got early on. And then from there, it's like, you don't need a ton of leads. You need more relationships. Because I guess like flipped the funnel. I focused on a 4-figure offer out of the gate versus trying to sell a $37 like membership out of the gate. Because the math didn't make sense. I'm like, Jay, just run the numbers. You're going to need thousands of leads every month in order for you to hit 5-figure months take home pay. What if you only had 4 clients paying you $3,000 or $4,000 each?
Okay. And so I want to pause here because when you said you want to flip the funnel, like you and I might understand that, but there's somebody here who's like on the journey of saying, okay, what does that like funnel mean? And so like a quick breakdown, digital marketing, you look at it as a funnel. And what you want to do at the top of the funnel is have your free content that becomes the largest point of attraction for people. And then as you descend down the funnel, what is happening is you're making lower ticket offers in a product suite that ultimately leads you to the apex of the pyramid, which is your highest price point. And in the coaching sphere, that's usually a one-on-one. So what Jereshia decided to do was flip the funnel, which meant that the triangle from upside down went right side up. So we're looking at a pyramid. And she's like, instead of starting at the bottom, I'm probably going to make an offer somewhere in the mid to high range. Yeah. Maybe not at the pinnacle quite yet.
It was, at the time, the first offer I sold was $3,000. This offer that I sold that got me a $60K month was $9,000.
Yep.
So it was like that $3,000 to $10,000 range. And honestly, from my experience, it was easier for me to convey value selling a higher ticket offer or maybe a more premium offer, one that a prospect uses more discernment when they're making the investment. I used to always sell the more expensive, the more luxury, the more expensive product in that market category.
Because there were margins in that game.
There are margins in that game, but the psychology of the buyer is totally different.
Okay.
Yeah, we can pause here.
Okay. See, this is why we get along, girl. This is why we go like we're weird together. We gotta slow it down because most people don't drink like our Mountain Dew, our business Mountain Dews. Okay, so what I want to do first, because far before we can actually talk about the margins and far before we talk about the psychology of that luxury buyer and far before we step into that, how did you just say, I'm a new coach, I'm gonna go here? What is the mindset?
I never looked at myself as new. And I think the reason for that, one of my mentors always told me this too. He's like, because I remember when I got promoted, I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is $400 million. This is the largest budget. I'm part of the largest budget program in the entire company. He was like, I don't care. You don't need to know how to do every single thing. You need to know how to ask the right questions. You need to know how to identify what problem matters for you to solve right now. And you need to know that if you don't have the answer, you need to go know in yourself that you can go figure out the solution. And I remember him telling me that. He's like, you have experience. You just may be new in this role, but that doesn't mean you are like brand new to what you're doing. Like, you have transferable skills that can allow you to succeed here. Leverage those transferable skills and ask the questions, meet the people, rely on your mentors to close the learning gap that you don't have. So when I entered in the coaching space, I think it's natural. I'm like, I've never done this before, but I remembered that. I'm like, Jereshia, you may never have presented and packaged yourself this way before, but you've built a business that had that did $50,000 in a year on a whim, like in college. You've had experience. I think it was maybe $30 million in sales that I did knocking doors. I'm like, girl, you know what you're doing. It's just, I had to learn how do I effectively articulate that and who is the right person that I can work with where my skill set is going to be applicable to the solution that I'm trying to help them get.
And so what did you do first? Did you figure out how do I effectively convey or how do I find my person?
It was like a both and. I was like, I knew that if I just kept talking, I'm like, I need to show up. Like, I need to put in your reps. And I remember sitting down with myself saying, because I had made like maybe $6,000 hodgepodging things, like trying to sell different stuff at the very beginning. It was like a 9-month period. I had made like $6,300 selling just whatever I could sell. And I was like,
in terms of coaching.
Okay. So I had tried a $37 membership. I had tried like a $7 ebook. I had tried like the one-off session for like $80 or something. And I was like, you need to sit down and decide, are you actually going to try to make this a business or are you like, is this just fun money? And I told myself, I'm going to give myself 3 years. I'm going to go all in for 3 years and I'm going to commit to 3 years of me consistently showing up before I even give myself an option to quit. And I remember that because I think I was reading Millionaire Next Door or some book back then. And I was like looking at what is the timeline that it takes for a business to typically become profitable? And they're like, at least 3 years. So I was like, if it takes the average human being in America 3 years to get a business profitable, can you make that commitment to yourself? So that was just like, I remember sitting down telling myself that, and I was like, okay, you're going to show up on live stream on Facebook every single week, and you're going to just share what you know.
So your messaging confidence came from talking. It wasn't like you did a master plan or hired somebody.
No.
You just got in front of people and you spoke.
That's it. And I think that it sounds so simple, but I think about even you, like you go to your Instagram or go to your YouTube or go to your podcast, you've been showing up consistently talking for years. And I think it can be easy for somebody looking at somebody now. It's like, oh, well, Jasmine was an overnight success. It's like, do you know how long she's been putting in her reps? Like, and I think that is something that I really understood the value of. Like, I used to love watching documentaries on like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or like star athletes. And it's like, they would go to the gym every single day and just put the reps in. And I knew for me, I'm an external processor. I'm like, I know that if I continue to talk, like if I'm in the room with somebody or if I'm having conversation with somebody, I may not know, the perfect way to articulate it in the 3-second soundbite, but in a 30-minute conversation, like, we'll be able to find the harmony and figure out whether or not we can work together. So I'm like, if I'm going to just consistently keep showing up and I'm going to just answer the questions that people keep asking me, or I'm going to document my journey if I don't have questions to answer, because there's a lot to learn in just sharing what am I learning? What am I struggling with? How am I figuring it out?
That's right.
And that's what I would publicly share. So that was the beginning.
So before we actually get into identifying the market that you wanted to serve and your thoughts to that, there's somebody who's listening and says, well, maybe I am not an external processor. Maybe I am not, and I don't know if you're an introvert or an extrovert. Even if you're an introvert, you have outgoing personality, and you do have series of sales. For somebody who says, well, that's just for Jereshia, I'm sure you've coached other people through this. So what do you say to that?
And most of my clients are the complete opposite of me. They are, I tell them the idea of going on camera, they're like, no, thank you. Yeah. I think that in today's age, if you want to build a business where you are selling your intellectual property, becoming a public figure in some capacity is a requirement.
Ooh.
And I think that is just one of those things that's just a cost of doing business. And I think that is something that more of us need to just come to terms with sooner or maybe faster, because I think that's what prevents a lot of potential from turning into profitability, is because of this fear of, I think public speaking is maybe the number one or second most feared thing outside of, death. More than death.
Right.
So I'm not saying this is like a walk in the park.
Right.
But it's like, if you are selling your intellectual property based off, so I'm selling coaching or consulting or whatever based off of results I've gotten, experience that I've gained, they're buying my IP. I have to show up. Like, I have to be willing to be a public figure, to share my perspective publicly, and to show up on a consistent basis to build that trust. Because when you are selling a more premium priced offer, people, again, their discernment is different when they're making that buying decision. So they're buying not off of, it's not an impulse purchase. It's not because, it's just the proximity is the first thing that came up on their feed. Like, too many times I buy stuff off of Instagram ads.
Same.
It's like, what? But they keep showing it to you. The threshold to purchase it isn't too high. My discernment isn't super high, and you'll just swipe the card. That's very different when you want somebody to come in and you're asking your client to be vulnerable with you.
Absolutely.
In a coaching dynamic.
Absolutely.
So
but can I pause? Because I had a conversation yesterday. We were doing consulting, and she's not a coach. She's an accountant. And I was really encouraging her that she's doing tax strategy. She is doing not just tax computation. And I'm like, these are people who have the means and are trying to look for ways. They can pick you, or they can pick another tax strategist. But why on paper would they pick one or the other? But if you can go out and really show your differences, your systems, your team, then that becomes a defining factor. And so it's not for people who are listening and be like, okay, well, I'm not trying to build a personal brand. I'm not a coach. I'm not selling my IP. But you, in a way,
you are. I'm not sitting here. This again goes back to the point of, I'm not asking you to become a famous influencer.
Right.
You are not looking to be, you don't have to be famous. You don't have to be an influencer. I'm not asking you to try to go build an audience of millions, but I am asking you to make it easy for a prospect to discover what your values are. Make it easy for a prospect to have an opportunity to create a transference of trust before they pull out their credit card to purchase with you, and give them the opportunity to understand what your perspective is. Because again, going to the tax strategist example, if I have 3 tax strategists that I could be hiring
That's
from,
right, say it.
Like, they all are technically delivering the same function of the job, but the experience of working with them is going to be night and day from person to person.
Thank you.
And who you choose to hire, you want somebody who has aligned values with you. You respect their perspective.
That's right.
And most of the time, and this is what I tell my clients, is that your clients don't get the opportunity to discover your perspective until either after they've paid you or behind some gateway. Like they've had to book a sales call. Right. They've had to, already pay you to discover that.
Yes.
Which can work. I'm not saying that it can't, but I imagine that it takes a lot longer to get a yes. Versus all that stuff you're doing privately, bring it public. It's going to shorten your sales cycle. You're going to be able to charge more. You're going to be able to differentiate
your leads
yourself.
Are pre-qualified.
Exactly. Like use your free content to pre-qualify your leads versus using your free content to build a mass audience of influence. And I think that's the difference. Like it's people, you're a service or coaching or consulting, it's a relationship.
Yep.
You cannot automate human connection. Like you have, I think there's a non-negotiable. And I think that video particularly is one of the best ways to create that transference of trust in a digital medium.
That's right.
Outside of, in person. I mean, that's
right.
like the best, but.
And even beyond that, like just as the final nail in the coffin, it's not just that video is the most effective, it's also what is indexed in the algorithm right now.
Yes.
So if you're gonna be spending time,
you might as well.
That's right. It's like triple dip. Can you please just try to do one thing that's gonna be favorable? Okay, so what we went through was really identifying how you found your voice and how you've built that business. And we spoke to the person who says it doesn't come natural, and then you made a case for it and you followed it up with facts and not feelings. And so now when we go to identify, you are going after a very particular person.
Yes.
And you made that, and that's something that's a little bit rare and a lot of people would not do. How did you go in and say, I'm going to identify this audience? What was that work like?
Well, identifying the audience was something that I always struggled with, but I was really clear on what is the problem that I solve, what is the promise that I can deliver. So I think that when I'm even coaching clients on like niching down, I like to think about it as just where can you specialize? And this, again, goes back from corporate experience and getting my degree. It's like, look at the people who got paid the most. Typically, if you look at doctors, a brain surgeon is going to get paid more than a general physician. In the engineering space, like a biomedical engineer is going to get paid more than a civil engineer because their area of expertise is more specialized. And I thought about that the same way in my business. I'm like, okay, what is this? How can I specialize the promise that I can deliver based off of results that I have seen and the pattern of results that I'm getting with clients or the pattern of results that I've been able to get for myself? That was a process. It's still a process. Like I think that you have to get some practice, whether you're doing it on your own or whether you start working with clients, then you start to notice patterns. Once you start to notice those patterns from client to client, like I keep repeating myself 80% of the time in these areas, or I keep seeing clients get these similar type of results 80% of the time. I'm like, that's golden. Now we know the patterns. How can we define a promise around that so that we can specialize you based off of the experience that you have and the results that you've seen? It's a reiterative process. You're going to continuously be refining over the years. But that's kind of was my approach. I'm like, people who are specialized get paid more. I feel like that'll be the same way in this coaching space. So just where can I specialize based off of what I know right now, continue to get more results, then refine my specialty. Get more results, refine my specialty. And that was like a rinse and repeat system I did over and over again over the years.
How long did it take for you to get to the 6 figures?
18 months.
Wow.
So it was 18 months, 9 months still working in corporate. And then I had my corporate dropout date and my Hawk Hustle Independence Day. And I quit my job. And then it was another 9 months. Then that's when I made my first $150,000 in a calendar year. And then from there was 150 to 330, 330 to like 840, 840 to...
What happened from the 330 to 840? What happened there?
I leveraged. So to get me to 300 grand, I had a $2,000 I ran it as a group coaching program at the time. And I was still doing some private one-on-one. And out of all the clients that I had worked with in private one-on-one and in the course or the coaching program at the time, that was $2,000. I'm like, all of these people, the ones that are succeeding, like my outliers, they're ready now to take their private one-on-one and document all the patterns that they're noticing and turn it into a group program. And I remembered when I was selling my 9K offer, I'm like, that thing sold like hotcakes. It was easy to sell. It was like, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to figure out how I can make another 5-figure offer. And around the 300 grand mark is when I went all in. I got rid of all my other offers. I decommissioned them. And I was like, I'm going to just create this one program called Leverage. And Leverage was helping individuals who have been selling private one-on-one or coaching or offering a service one-on-one, had got success from it and wanted to document that and turn that into a group program.
Interesting.
And it was
so you specialized.
I specialized again.
Yep.
And I always say use your client's feedback to inform your frameworks moving forward. So it was never like, I never was pulling things out of a hat just randomly.
Right.
I was really good at listening to what are my clients telling me? Where do they start? Where do they end? I think every great program solves one problem and creates a new one.
That's right.
So I'm like, pay attention to that. Like, what is the problem that this one solved? What new problem is created because they've achieved a new level of success? Is that a problem that you want to anchor your messaging against? Is that a problem that you want to monetize and to solve? And that 300 grand mark, I think, is a really pivotal point in anybody's business, because I feel like it's one of those defining moment periods, because a lot of what I did that made me successful, things would have to change in order for me to get from 300 grand to $1 million.
Explain that. Like what? Let's get in the nitty gritty.
Yeah, I think that you can get to 300 grand without a lot of standardization. I think you can get there just out of a sheer hustle. I mean, you can get to $1 million off of sheer hustle and willpower. You'll cap out and burn out shortly after. But 300 grand, I think that you can sell probably 3-4 different offers and just like muster your way up with sales activities to get there. I think that is very difficult to do beyond 300 grand from my own experience and what I see with clients, especially when you layer in their mothers or they're going through tough financial, stuff with their partners or like with life happening. So that was like a moment in time where I was like, what is your model going to be? What is the model that you're going to use to get to $1 million with? I'm like, I can either double down on this $2,000 offer and get that to $1 million. And the thing that I asked myself is, okay, Jay, you could sell anything. Get that off the table. What do you want to anchor your messaging around? What psychology of buyer do you want to talk to for the next 3 years? And that was what influenced me to say, I can either try to sell to the newbies in the industry, and I have to play a different lead generation game. I have to play it's a different way to operate the business. It's a volume game. I was like, am I going to play the volume game, or am I going to play like the deep value, close relationship game? And I think that's the decision you have to make at 300 grand.
That's right.
And that was the decision that I made. I was like, where has it been easiest for you to sell? And again, what psychology of buyer do you want to market towards on a consistent basis? And I was like, I'd rather market to the person that is more sophisticated, uses more discernment in their decision making, but is also looking for a more specialized solution to the problem that they have.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it went like hotcakes. Really? Then COVID happened, and then it went like hotcakes again.
Why do you think?
I think that because of economic sentiment. Like, I think during COVID, even though we were going through a massive, global pandemic and people are like freaking out, there was a flood of cash in the American market.
Yes, there was.
And I think because there was a flood of cash and a lot of people didn't have to work. I mean, I shouldn't say have to. They couldn't go into work. Right. People were laid off. But also there was a lot of stimulus built into the economy at the time, I don't know if this has happened in another point in history to my knowledge, but during COVID, I feel like the buyer sentiment, while we're going through a global crisis, people had this feeling of opportunity.
Yes.
Housing.
A fresh start.
It was, yes. And you can see that in how prices even in real estate went. Like,
yes,
people were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars over asking price. Yes. And it's like, where are people getting all this money from? And it's like, interest rates were stupid low. Yeah. So like, I think there was a lot of overall sentiment of like hope, possibility. I can do anything.
That's right.
And people, this is the first time I think as a halt that all of us had, people had a moment to stop.
Yes.
I think a lot of people were keeping themselves busy and distracting themselves from the internal discomfort that they were feeling, like dissatisfaction in their jobs.
Yes.
Dissatisfaction in their relationships. It was like a wake-up call.
Yes.
And I think that when you have that global moment in time that pauses all of us, and it's what do I really want? So many people were like, I want to grow my business. I want to start a business.
Yes.
And at the time, my ex-husband, he's a hedge fund manager, and he was like, milk this. And I said, say less. He's like, this is a very rare moment in time. And I really do appreciate him because he helped me understand macroeconomics in a way that I didn't have exposure to.
So explain it for us right now for people who are...
Well, I'm going to explain it at the golden retrieval level that I know.
That's great. That's great. Because what happens is because history repeats itself.
100%.
We hope and praise that there's not a global pandemic, but people will at some point in time realize that they want something else in their relationship, in their life, in their business, in their professional life, whatever the case may be. And they will have their own personal COVID. And so when another person can meet them when the nail goes through their foot, Meet them right when they're experiencing their own personal
Yeah.
COVID. How do we milk it for what it is? Teach us that.
He explained it to me in a macroeconomic standpoint. Like every industry has a cycle, and it's important for you to understand based off the industry you're in, what is your cycle? There's always going to be an ebb and flow.
Yes.
Ray Dalio talks about this in the book Principles too. And if you look at real estate, like '08 was a massive boom. A lot of people lost a lot of money, but that's where a lot of wealth is created during those tough times. So what we were noticing, he's like, this is probably going to last like 9 months to maybe 2 years. We don't know how long it's going to last, obviously, but like there's a flood of money in the economy right now. There's a lot, people have opportunity to spend that money right now. And for your industry in particular, like people want new businesses, new job opportunities. They want to create their own career paths. Like they want that type of freedom. If you can have the capacity to be able to serve the demand when the demand is, I don't have to manufacture the demand. The demand is there. These people are going to be buying regardless. So who are they going to buy from? And that's where I was like, okay, he's like, this might not last that long. So go for the next 18 months and like just go ham. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go for the next 18 months.
So what did ham look like for you?
Ham looked like for me, specialize my offer. And
again,
that was when I decommissioned the old program. I was like, double down on where you see the biggest opportunity right now. And if people have the money, which they do. And I also look at like discretionary spending.
Yep.
So if you look at the type of consumer that you typically attract, and out of the time I had a good enough data to look at like my top 20% of clients, and the way that I kind of do this is not like a pure science, but I go into my Stripe account and what type of credit card or debit card are my clients paying for my services with. And that gives me some level of insight. Majority of my clients are like either Chase or Amex card holders. Which if you're an Amex card holder, that lets me know that you have I would guess you have a larger threshold for what you can purchase on that card. Lets me know your credit score is probably a little bit higher. This person probably has maybe a little bit more discretionary spending. That's not like a science, but like that's when I talk about know your customer. Those are like little just things that I pay attention to. And at the time I was like, okay, I'm going to specialize again based off of the best results my clients are getting.
Okay, let's pause here for a second.
Yep.
You enter in with a 2K or more or less when you realize that you have a bona fide business, you have your 2K offer.
That's what got me to 300 grand.
Right. And then at 300 grand, you decide to decommission those, go to a 10K offer.
Yes.
That gets you to what point? 800?
That got me to, I've sold that program for the next 3 years. So that program got me to from 333,000 or something to the next year, 840 grand. The next year was like, I think 1.2 mil and then 1.4 mil, something like that. Okay. That was the main offer I sold for 3 years.
From like, I'm going to take my one-on-one clients and I'm going to teach those one-on-one, I'm going to teach those people how they take their one-on-one clients and build a group coaching program. And then you specialized again from that group.
Yes. Okay. So like services that sell was the 2K offer that I sold to get me 300 grand. And I was helping anybody that wanted to sell their first 4-figure offer. It could be coaches or service providers.
Okay.
So there was a little bit of generalization in the who. There was like, and it was still kind of like a newer business owner. And then from there, I was like, do I want to keep serving the newbies? Which I love y'all. We all got to start there. Or do I want to anchor my business against something more sophisticated? Okay. So I was like, okay, I'm going to work with people who are already making close to 100 grand, somewhere between 50 and 100,000. They've seen results and they need help now, like multiplying those results.
Got it.
And that's where I knew my sweet spot was. I think like that's also important for me to layer in this conversation. I'm really good at optimizing something that exists and like taking it to the next level. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are really good at like getting a business off the ground. There are some entrepreneurs who are really good at once a business is off the ground, they're really good at like growing it and scaling it. And I think I read maybe E-Myth. It might have been that book that was like, help me. I'm like, I'm really good. If something already exists, I can optimize it. I can look for profit opportunities. I can reduce overhead. I'm really good at that. So that was also like, okay, that's where you get the best. That's where I thrive coaching. That's where it's easiest for me to coach. And I'm like, quite honestly, there's more money to be made there. Yep. So that's when I specialize. I'm like, I'm not going to bank my messaging, my marketing, my business model for newbies. I'm going to bank it towards for somebody who's a little bit further on. And that offer was 10K. I started with 10 people to validate it, make sure the process was tight, figure out the messaging, and then continue to refine the promise. So it was really helping people get beyond their first $200,000 in revenue with a leverage group program.
Got it.
By helping them reduce their number of private one-on-one hours, and turning 15 one-on-one hours into 2 calls a month type of thing.
And then you refined it again going into COVID. And what did that change look like?
Well, during COVID, it was just like, I think the benefit of why I was able to capture so much cash during COVID is because my delivery was tight. Delivery was standardized. The promise was clear. All the aspects of my client delivery were documented, standardized. I was able to bring in program coaches without diminishing or my client results. So like the offer was solid. So during COVID, what happens even with like the Oprah effect, when people go on Oprah and you get on her wish list, so many businesses have gone bankrupt because of that, because they get all this attention, but they can't handle the demand. They cannot fulfill it. And I was really good at the fulfillment. And so during COVID, I was like, Jay, just go ham on the marketing, go ham on your messaging. And that's when I launched my podcast. So at the time, all of my sales really came from live video. And I would show up live. Pretty much every time I went live, I'd make a sale. But I was like, I need to figure out a way to leverage my marketing content and create more of like my own internal Netflix. I need like bingeable content for people. So I started my podcast. The podcast might have started maybe right before COVID, but I actually like put effort into it. I prioritized the platform because I noticed a lot of my clients would find me on Instagram. They would binge my podcast. They were private lurkers. They were not public engagers. They were silent and private decision makers. So that's something else I noticed too from my data. And I was like, okay, if somebody consumed at least 4 hours of my content, they'd be ready to make a buying decision. Not to say they'd be a yes, but they'd be like primed enough. So I was like, you just need to create long form, bingeable content. And all of my messaging was 100% tailored to the promise of the program that I was selling. And I think, again, that's a differentiation in marketing from I'm being an influencer and want to go viral. I mean, like, I've never had a podcast that I published get more than no podcast I've ever published has gotten more than 2,000 downloads. If you have 1,000 people who are mostly qualified that are listening, you can make millions.
Yes.
And I think that was, again, like I'm not chasing the masses. Like my free content became my church. It was like my free content was, how do I get you to $100,000? You can listen to my podcast and get to $100,000. Because that's what I need you to be pre-qualified before you can even work with me.
So good.
So all of my free content was, how do I get you pre-qualified so that you can even be eligible?
So good.
And where what I'm selling will make sense at the right time for you.
That's right.
And then and I would document every objection I got on a sales call. And 2 weeks later, that would turn into marketing content. Yep. So all of my marketing content its only job was to pre-qualify leads, help address objections, introduce a new perspective, shift a belief that aligned with the offer that I was selling.
So when we talk about shifting beliefs, this is where I kind of want to loop it, kind of like close the conversation, because we've gone through so much. When there's somebody who's hearing this, how do you shift the beliefs for somebody who says, that will just never be me? I will never be that. What do you say to that person?
Well, you can't convince somebody of anything. Like I know that in my work, I'm like, people can borrow my belief for a short period of time, but their essence, you can't force somebody to do anything. But when I think about shifting a belief, I used to have a belief that I have to run paid advertising in order to get in front of new leads for my business. And so when I think about a belief, I'm not necessarily trying to change their character, but I am trying to help them think differently about how they approach solving the problem that they have, or being able to properly identify what their problem actually is. Because 9 times out of 10, people come to me, it's like, oh, my business needs to grow. I need more leads. I need to go viral. I need to run ads. I'm like, that could be the case. And also, you could double your revenue right now because you're undercharging and we just need to increase your price. We could create more profitability in the business because, by reducing some of your overhead, because you're overspending because your client delivery is too customized from client to client. If we standardize your delivery, you don't need 3 people to be manually customizing every client relationship. So that's what I mean by shifting a belief. I was really just introducing new variables on how they can approach solving their problem and being able to properly analyze what their problem actually is. So it's not I remember in the early days, I spent so much time trying to convince people of that you can make thousands of dollars. And I'm like, Jay, you're losing out on money trying to and I think that's a tough thing for a woman of color. I feel like this is very true too when I have clients that are immigrants. I'm the first in my family to do a lot. I think when you're one of the first, it's very natural to I gotta bring everybody along with me. The thing that I've learned in coaching is that I want for you what you want for you. I can't want for you more than you want for yourself. And it's not my responsibility to project what I think you should want because of I don't know what my own beliefs are.
That's right.
So I think that's a detachment thing I've had to learn over the years, that like I only can want for somebody ultimately what they deeply desire and want for themselves. Now, a lot of the time we lie to ourselves about what we want, which I'm like, we can work through that. But at the essence, I'm helping you materialize, what your heart desire is, what assignment God has, attached on your heart that you believe is available for you. So when I say convincing or shifting a belief, I want to make sure I'm clear. I'm like, I'm not trying to change this person's character, or I'm not trying to project my beliefs onto them. I'm just trying to help them properly diagnose what their issue in their business is, and also introduce new variables that they haven't considered to get to their outcome.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I wanted Jereshia Hawk on the show. One thing she just said, I'm here to introduce new variables to solve an old problem. I am hoping that at some point in this conversation, you were able to apply a new belief, not changing who you are, but simply saying there is a different way to look at what is going on in my business. I hope that you understand that what she did to got to where she's going and where she is she stopped doing what everybody else was doing. And she used skills within restrictions. She basically said, you must take what you have and make it work. And she learned that in cornfields, and that somehow, from Detroit to the cornfields to, La Jolla, California, this is what she's been doing. And she flipped her funnel. She realized that she can play the small game with newbies, or she can simply say, I have a skill set. I need to define my message. I need to define who it's for. And then I need to be able to say, I can go out and strategically build out a funnel that leads the right people to me. Now, one of the things that her mentors had said when she felt unqualified, so if you are in the place of feeling unqualified, number one, you don't need to know everything. Number two, you know how to ask the right questions. And number three, you can ask for help. Thank you, Jereshia, for being here and helping us ask for help, helping us ask better questions. How do people go deeper with you? Where are we sending them? I mean, you have a podcast.
Yeah.
You have a website. Let's give a little shout out.
Yeah, definitely come check out the podcast. It's called Jereshia Said. You can listen to it on iTunes, Spotify, wherever. I'm just in the middle right now of doing a season of talking about taking 7 months off from my sabbatical, how I'm re-entering my business, how I'm rethinking about business. So it's really juicy right now, I feel like, just even being able to afford to take a sabbatical and just
7 month sabbatical.
7 month sabbatical without having to change the quality of my life. And the dope part about it is, and I think maybe the thing that I want to drive home is just remember what you started your business. Like many of us who are starting online businesses are so that we can create a certain lifestyle for ourselves and for our family, and make sure that you are leveraging the profit from your business to build your personal net worth. I cannot emphasize that enough. I think it's very easy to get in our space and get distracted by big launch numbers and big revenue numbers and focus everything on that. And then you might have had the biggest launch of your life, but you didn't pay yourself last month.
That's right.
And it's the peace that I have right now is because of this last 8 years of how I manage my profit. And I'm deeply grateful for that, and deeply grateful for the Instagram and Facebook and the internet because of that. But that's a lot of what I've been talking about in this season of the podcast, is just how to make sure that you're clear on what your owner's intent is, how to align your business model with that intent, so that when you're operating your business, your profit that you take home and that you keep is actually aligned with what you ultimately want and desire. So come on over to the podcast.
Yes, and amen. Jereshia Said, and JereshiaHawk.com.
Yep, JereshiaHawk.com.
I love it.
Slide in my DMs on Instagram.
Yeah, she's there.
Yeah, I am there. She's there. Tell me what you enjoyed from this episode. I would love to continue the conversation.
At Jereshia Hawk, at Jasmine Star. We create this show for people who are ready to up-level their lives, talk about scaling, and look at different business models, because there is not one size business. She is living proof that a very smart, brilliant, strong woman can find a way to build a life that she loves, a 7-figure business, while also creating an intention for wealth, to be able to do things that empower her, take a 7-month sabbatical, and then share what she knows with others. Thank you for listening and watching to The Jasmine Star Show.